Have you ever sat alone, maybe after a long day, maybe after some quiet heartbreak, and just whispered to yourself, "If life hurts this much, why am I even here?" Not as a cry for attention, not as a dramatic outburst, but as an honest moment where the noise fades and you're finally face to face with something raw, something real. If that question has ever passed through your mind, even for a second, you're not broken, you're not weak, you're not lost, you're awake. Because that question doesn't come from despair. It comes from clarity. It's not a sign of defeat, it's the first glimpse of truth. Most people spend their entire lives distracting themselves, scrolling, numbing, rushing, pretending they're fine. But when the distractions fail, when the silence finally catches up, that question appears like a whisper from the depths of your being. And it asks again, if life is suffering, why live at all? It sounds so haunting, so final. But what if it's not a dead end? What if it's a doorway? What if the pain isn't something to escape, but something to understand? You see, many people misunderstand Buddhism from the very first line. They hear that the Buddha taught life is suffering, and they take it as a curse, a gloomy doctrine, as if he were saying, you are doomed to misery, so just accept it. But that's not it at all. The Buddha wasn't a doomsayer. He wasn't some sad philosopher lost in theories of despair. He was, more than anything, a healer. And his first teaching, the first noble truth, was not a sentence of hopelessness. It was a diagnosis. And you don't go to a doctor to be told how bad you are. You go because you want someone to finally tell you the truth, to look you in the eyes and say, here's what's happening, and here's how we can begin to heal. That's exactly what the Buddha did. When he said, life contains suffering, he wasn't condemning us to misery. He was simply being honest about how things feel beneath the surface, beneath the noise, beneath the masks. And if we're honest with ourselves, we already know it's true. Pain doesn't wait for an invitation. It arrives unannounced and it stays too long. We lose people, we fail, we get sick, we grow old. We reach for happiness and it slips away just as we start to touch it. And even when things do go well, have you noticed? A quiet unease creeps in. We're anxious that the good times won't last. We're afraid of losing what we found. We wonder if this is all there is. It's like sitting on a chair with one short leg. You can function, you can live, but you can't quite settle. That's what the Buddha meant by suffering, not just pain, but that underlying wobble of life. That persistent instability. That sense that something's always just a little off. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But here's the twist that changes everything. That wobble is not a flaw in you. It's not proof that something's wrong with your life. It's simply the nature of how life is. Always shifting, always changing, always moving. You don't need to panic when the waves rise. You need to learn how to sail. Because life isn't about eliminating the storm. It's about finding your balance within it. Now imagine this. You're a sailor on open waters. The sky turns dark, winds roar, waves begin to tower. You have two options. You can panic, let go of the wheel, curse the storm, give up. Or you can take a breath. You can anchor yourself in reality. You can adjust your sails, not to stop the storm, but to move through it. That's what Buddhism offers, not escape, but navigation. It doesn't promise you calm seas. It teaches you how to stand steady when the winds howl. And maybe that's the real point of life. Not to avoid pain, not to chase endless pleasure, but to grow in understanding. To learn how to meet each moment, not with fear, but with wisdom. So many of us try to fix life, to make it neat, predictable, controllable. But life is not a machine. It's more like a river, flowing, unpredictable, full of bends and rapids and quiet stillness. You don't conquer a river, you learn how to swim. So when you find yourself wondering why you're here, when life feels heavy and the days feel gray, Remember this: you're not here to win a game, you're here to wake up. And sometimes it takes pain to pull us out of sleep. Sometimes it takes suffering to finally ask the deeper questions. Sometimes it takes the heartbreak to crack us open so that the truth can enter. And maybe that's not a curse at all. Maybe it's a beginning. Because the moment you stop running, when you sit still with the question, when you finally listen, something extraordinary happens. You start to see clearly. You realize that peace isn't hiding in a perfect future. It's hiding beneath all the things you've been avoiding. So yes, life hurts. But in that hurt, there is also hope. Not hope that things will always be easy, but hope that you will learn how to live deeply, honestly, and freely, even in the middle of the storm. That's not the end of the story. That's just the first breath of the real journey. And that journey, your journey, begins with a shift so simple, so powerful, it almost seems invisible. It begins the moment you stop pretending everything is fine. It begins the moment you say, yes, life is difficult, but I'm ready to understand why. Now that we've taken that first honest breath, the one that whispers, yes, life hurts, we arrive at a deeper truth. Not as victims, not as pessimists, but as seekers. There's a word the Buddha used, an ancient word, soft and yet powerful, dukkha. People often translate it simply as suffering, but that's like describing an ocean as wet. It misses the weight, the movement, the undercurrent. Dukkha isn't just the agony of heartbreak or the pain of loss. It's not just the cry of grief or the sting of physical illness. No, dukkha is far more subtle. It's the ache behind our smile, the wobble beneath our success, the quiet restlessness that visits us even in moments of triumph. It's that sensation you get when you finally achieve what you thought you wanted and feel an unexpected emptiness right after. It's when you're surrounded by everything you used to pray for, good health, a steady job, a loving family, and still, something feels just slightly off. Like a chair with a leg too short. You don't fall. You can sit, but you can never quite relax. And that's the thing, dukkha isn't just about what's wrong in life. It's about the fragile way we cling to what feels right. We want the joy to stay, the love to never fade, the success to always grow. But nothing stays the same. The moment you hold something too tightly, it begins to slip through your fingers. That resistance to change, that unwillingness to let go, is its own kind of suffering. Think about all the moments in your life when you felt completely happy, maybe on a warm evening with someone you loved, maybe at the peak of your career, maybe just lying in bed with no responsibilities. Now think about how fast those moments passed. You didn't want them to end, but they did. They always do. And in that very act of reaching for permanence in an impermanent world, we suffer. Not because the joy was false, but because we couldn't bear to see it go. This is the nature of dukkha. It shows up when things fall apart, but also when things come together, because even the coming together carries within it the seed of eventual change. And here's what's even more surprising. Dukkha doesn't always feel like pain. Sometimes it feels like anxiety. Sometimes it feels like boredom. Sometimes it feels like almost enough. That's why it's so easy to miss. We go through our days chasing moments, believing the next thing will fix the feeling. The next relationship, the next job, the next house, the next spiritual breakthrough. But even when we get what we crave, the restlessness remains, shifting shape, whispering quietly, not quite, try again. And we do. We chase and chase, not realizing that what we're really running from is that ever-present wobble inside. But the Buddha didn't reveal this truth to make us feel defeated. He wasn't saying, life is broken. He was saying, this is how it moves. Life is dynamic, everything changes. And if we expect it to be solid, permanent, predictable, we will hurt. Not because life is cruel, but because we are trying to make it something it was never meant to be. Dukkha is not a judgment. It's not even a problem to be fixed. It's a law to be understood. And once we understand it, not just intellectually but deeply, something starts to shift. We begin to loosen our grip. We start to see clearly. And we stop blaming life for doing what life naturally does. Imagine sailing on a vast ocean. The waves rise and fall. The winds change direction. Storms appear out of nowhere. If you fight it, if you scream at the sea to be still, you suffer. But if you learn to sail with it, to adjust your course, to accept the rhythm, you discover a strange kind of freedom. The ocean didn't change. You did. That's the power of seeing dukkha clearly. It doesn't erase the instability, but it teaches us to stop resenting it, to move with it, to even appreciate its dance. Because the moment we stop trying to freeze life in place is the moment we start to live it fully. And this is where real wisdom begins, not in controlling every detail, but in seeing through the illusion of control, in recognizing that pain is part of the package and that beauty still lives alongside it. When the Buddha spoke of dukkha, he wasn't trying to discourage us. He was inviting us to open our eyes, not to a life of despair, but to a life of truth. And only when we truly see that truth can we begin the next step, asking not just what suffering is, but where it comes from. Because the waves are only half the story. The real secret lies beneath the surface. Once you see dukkha clearly, once you really feel the wobble in your bones, it's impossible not to ask the next question. Why? Why does life feel this way? Why does the joy fade? Why does peace seem so close, yet always just out of reach? Is this just the way life has to be? Are we cursed to wander through it, endlessly reaching for something we can never quite hold? The Buddha's answer to that question was quiet, simple, and completely revolutionary. He said, "The problem isn't life. The problem is the way we cling to it. More specifically, it's the craving inside us, the thirst that never ends." In the ancient language of Pali, this craving is called tanha. It doesn't just mean wanting. It means a deep, gnawing hunger. It's that restless energy in the chest, that fire in the mind that whispers, if only I had more money. If only they loved me back. If only this moment could last forever. This thirst is seductive. It convinces us that just one more achievement, one more possession, one more validation will finally make us whole. And sometimes we get what we want. Sometimes we feel that sweet relief of satisfaction, but it never lasts. Because tanha is never satisfied. It's like drinking salt water. You feel quenched for a moment, only to find yourself thirstier than before. This is the root cause of our suffering. Not life itself, not the people around us, not even the pain of change. It's the clinging, the grasping, the refusal to let things be as they are. We crave pleasure, and when it disappears, we suffer. We crave safety, and when life wobbles, we panic. We crave permanence, and when things change, we break. But the truth is, this thirst is not random. It's not a flaw in our character. It comes from something deeper, something we rarely question. It comes from the illusion of self. You see, beneath the thirst, there is a story we are constantly telling ourselves. This is me. This is mine. This must last. It's like building a sandcastle by the sea. We pour ourselves into it, our body, our identity, our accomplishments, our memories. We shape the towers. We decorate the edges. We stand back and admire our work. And even though we know the ocean is always moving, even though we know the tide will come, we pretend that the castle can stay. We take this temporary structure and try to make it eternal. So when someone insults us, it feels personal, like they kicked our castle. When aging shows up in the mirror, we panic, because the walls are cracking. When loss arrives, we crumble, because the waves have taken what we claimed as ours. But the ocean was never the enemy. It's just doing what oceans do. The suffering comes from our refusal to accept it. And when that sandcastle starts to erode, when the waves of life wash away something we love, three powerful forces light up inside us. First, there is greed, the desperate urge to gather more, to build taller walls, to protect what we think is ours. More money, more praise, more control. We believe that if we just have enough, we can finally rest. Then comes anger, the fury we feel when life doesn't go according to our plan, when others threaten our illusions, when things fall apart and we demand that they stay the same. And finally, there is delusion, the confusion that keeps us believing the castle is real, that if we work hard enough, control tightly enough, we can stop the tide. It's the refusal to see impermanence for what it is. These three fires, greed, anger, and delusion, aren't emotions we randomly feel. They are the natural consequence of clinging to something fragile. They are the heat that rises when we try to make the impermanent permanent. And here's the hardest truth. The more we cling, the more we burn. But there is a way out. And it begins, not by fighting the thirst, but by understanding it, by watching it, by no longer feeding it with blind reaction. This is where mindfulness becomes a mirror. Instead of chasing every craving, we pause. Instead of reacting with anger, we observe. Instead of getting lost in delusion, we wake up, even just for a moment. And in that space, something quiet begins to shift. We begin to see the thirst for what it is. Not an enemy, but a misunderstanding. We've been searching for fulfillment in things that cannot provide it. We've been asking the sandcastle to be a mountain, and it never will be. But that doesn't mean we stop living. It means we live differently. We stop building out of fear. We start creating out of love. We stop demanding permanence. We start dancing with impermanence. We learn to enjoy the sandcastle knowing it will not last. We marvel at its beauty. We bless its form. And when the wave comes, we bow. This is not passivity. This is not giving up. This is liberation. Because once you stop clinging, you stop suffering. Once you stop burning, you begin to feel the coolness of peace. This is the insight that turns the whole world upside down. We don't suffer because life is imperfect. We suffer because we demand that it be perfect for us. And that demand, that thirst, is optional. So what happens when we let it go? What's left when the fire goes out? That is what we'll explore next. Once you begin to recognize the thirst, the tanha, that keeps pulling at your soul, you start to see the world more clearly. Not the world outside, but the one inside. The landscape of your mind, the battlefield of your emotions. And then something startling becomes visible. You're not just drinking salt water. You're lighting fires. Every time you crave something and can't get it, there's frustration. Every time you lose what you thought was yours, there's pain. Every time you believe your thoughts without question, there's confusion. These are not fleeting moods. They are forces, raw, burning, relentless. The Buddha called them the three fires: greed, anger, and delusion. And they don't just flicker at the surface. They burn deep. Start with greed, or labha in the ancient tongue. It begins innocently enough. You want comfort, you want security, you want love, connection, beauty, but greed doesn't stop there. It grows, it whispers, just a little more. More wealth, more admiration, more control, more pleasure. And just like that, you're no longer enjoying life, you're chasing it. You scroll endlessly through your phone, not even sure what you're looking for. You overwork, you overeat, you overthink. You say yes to things that drain you, hoping they'll fill some invisible gap. But the more you feed it, the bigger it grows. And what began as a spark becomes a wildfire. Greed doesn't just burn you, it burns the world around you. Because when you want something badly enough, you're willing to ignore consequences, to bend truth, to break hearts, to betray yourself. And yet there's no fulfillment, just more wanting, more thirst. Then there is anger dosa. It's the fire that erupts when life doesn't follow your script, when someone disrespects you, when the traffic doesn't move, when a stranger says the wrong thing at the wrong time. It starts like a flash of heat in the chest, a tightening in the jaw, a pulse in your temple, and if you don't catch it, it explodes. But what's hidden underneath that fire is almost always fear. The fear of losing control. The fear of being small, unseen, or unloved. The fear of being vulnerable, so we lash out. We blame. We push others away in the name of protecting ourselves. But anger doesn't protect. It isolates. It's like throwing fire at someone and standing downwind. You burn too, and still we cling to it. Because in the moment, anger feels powerful. It feels righteous. It makes us forget our helplessness. But afterward, all that's left is ash. And then there's the most dangerous fire of all, delusion, moha. Delusion is not loud. It doesn't scream like anger. It doesn't beg like greed. It whispers. It convinces you that you are separate from others, that your thoughts are always true, that if you just keep going, keep collecting, keep pushing, everything will be okay. Delusion is living in a dream you don't know you're dreaming. It's waking up every day and assuming, this is who I am, this is what life is. It's never pausing to ask, is it? Delusion is what makes us identify with the sandcastle, as if it were real, eternal, untouchable. It's what keeps us blind to the tide creeping in. It's what keeps us clinging even as the waves begin to pull. The saddest part, delusion convinces us we are free, even while we're in chains. So we live our lives managing the fires, trying to look calm while our minds are smoldering, trying to build happiness while we carry the tools of destruction. But the Buddha didn't leave us here. He didn't just diagnose the fire. He offered water. He showed us that these flames, though fierce, are not permanent. They arise because of conditions. They burn because we feed them. But what happens when we stop feeding them? When we no longer act on every craving? When we no longer believe every angry thought? When we begin to question the stories that fuel our delusion, the fires begin to fade, not all at once, not overnight, but breath by breath, reaction by reaction, moment by moment. They weaken, and in the cool space that remains, something ancient awakens. Clarity, compassion, freedom. Imagine this, your mind as a room filled with smoke. It's been this way for so long you forgot what clean air feels like. And then, one day, a window opens. A breeze enters. The smoke begins to lift. And for the first time you can see, not just the world but yourself. Not just your suffering but your potential. This is not fantasy. This is not blind hope. This is what happens when you stop fueling the fire, and this is where the path truly begins. Because beyond the flames, beyond the ashes, beyond the illusions, there is something still, something cool, something clear. And that, dear listener, is what the Buddha called Nibbāna, the unburned mind, the untouched peace. But before we go there, we must pause. Because this work, this quiet rebellion against the fires is not easy. It requires training, attention, discipline of the heart. It requires a path, and that path is what we walk next. There comes a point on the path when you're just tired, not just physically tired, not the kind of exhaustion that a nap can fix, but soul-deep weariness, tired of running, tired of reacting, tired of watching your mind burn again and again, with craving, with anger, with confusion. And in that quiet fatigue, something opens. A whisper you might have missed before now begins to grow louder. There must be another way. And the Buddha, with all the gentleness of someone who's been through the fire himself, says, there is. It's not a fantasy. It's not a myth. It's not some mystical reward after death. It's called Nibbāna, and it begins right now, not with fireworks, not with fanfare, but with the extinguishing of the flame. You see, the word Nibbāna literally means to blow out, like blowing out a candle. Not killing the light, but letting the flame rest. Letting the fire that's been devouring you finally go still. It's not about destroying yourself. It's about releasing yourself from the heat, from the noise, from the madness. Imagine your mind as a forest that's been on fire for decades. You've gotten so used to the smoke that you've forgotten what clean air feels like. But one day, a breeze arrives, the flames begin to retreat, and in the silence that follows, for the first time, you breathe. That, dear listener, is Nibbāna. Not a place, not a prize, but a shift. A shift in how you relate to your own mind. A shift in how you meet the world. It's the moment you feel anger rising and don't let it control you. It's the moment you notice craving and let it pass without chasing it. It's the moment you realize you are not your thoughts, your impulses, your conditioning. It's the still point at the center of the storm. And here's the beauty. You don't have to wait until you're a monk on a mountain. You don't have to abandon your job or your family. You don't have to become perfect. Nibbāna is not the reward for purity. It's the freedom from punishment. The release from the self-inflicted pain of holding on. And it begins in small, quiet moments. Like when you pause before sending that angry text. Like when you feel jealousy and say, "This isn't who I want to be." Like when you sit in silence, watching the breath and realize that peace was always there, just buried beneath the noise. One breath, one choice, one moment of awareness. That's all it takes to touch Nibbāna. And every time you return to that stillness, you train the mind. You show it. We don't have to burn today. We don't have to drink the salt water. We don't have to build castles against the tide. And slowly, the fires lose their grip. Not because they're destroyed, but because you stop adding wood. You stop feeding the story. You stop rehearsing the drama. You stop clinging to what was never meant to last. And in that letting go, you find something far more lasting. Clarity, kindness, freedom. You begin to feel a strange new presence in your life. Not excitement, not thrill, but something deeper. Equanimity, a calmness that doesn't depend on conditions, a joy that doesn't demand perfection. And with it comes a knowing, quiet but steady, I am okay, right here, right now, without needing anything to change. This doesn't mean pain disappears. It means pain no longer defines you. It means you can sit with discomfort, grief, even fear, and not be consumed. It's like standing in the center of a hurricane untouched, everything swirling around you, but inside, stillness. This is what the Buddha offered. Not a life without difficulty, but a life without slavery to difficulty. Because when you're no longer controlled by craving, you are free. When you're no longer inflamed by anger, you are clear. When you're no longer fooled by illusion, you are awake. This is what it means to live without fire. And what's left when the fire is gone? Something ancient, something simple, something so natural it feels like coming home. The mind unobstructed, the heart open, the world seen with fresh eyes, no drama, no chasing, just presence. And now maybe you understand, Nibbāna isn't the end of life. It's the beginning of truly living. You've been wandering through smoke for so long. Now you can finally see the stars. But how do we get there more often? How do we train the heart to return again and again to that cool, clear space? There is a path. It's not hidden. It's not exclusive. It's practical. It's step by step. It's been walked by millions before us. And that path, known as the Eightfold Path, is what we now begin to explore. Peace is not a stroke of luck. It's not an accident. It's not something that shows up at your doorstep because you've read a few wise quotes or burned a stick of incense. Peace is a path. And like every path, it must be walked, step by step, breath by breath, moment by moment. The Buddha didn't leave us in the dark with lofty concepts and poetic riddles. He gave us a clear roadmap, a practical guide for daily living, a way to not just understand suffering but to walk out of it. It's called the Noble Eightfold Path. But don't let the word eightfold scare you. This isn't a list to memorize. It's a rhythm to live by. A natural unfolding of a life rooted in presence, wisdom, and compassion. And it begins not with doing, but with seeing. At the core of the path lies right view, not in the sense of right versus wrong, like moral judgment, but right as in aligned, clear, free from distortion. Right view is the understanding that life is impermanent, that clinging causes suffering, that there's a way out. It's seeing things as they are, not as we wish them to be. And from that clarity flows right intention, the quiet resolve to live with kindness, to renounce harm, to let go of ill will. It's the decision not to be perfect, but to be conscious, to respond rather than react, to live from the heart, not the ego. These two, view and intention, are the compass. They orient your journey, but then come the steps, and they begin with the way you speak. Right speech is not about being polite. It's about speaking truthfully, compassionately, mindfully. No gossip, no lies, no words designed to wound, because every word is a seed. And what we say plants the future we walk into. Then comes right action. Simple but powerful. Don't harm, don't steal. Don't betray the trust that holds humanity together. It's not about religious rules. It's about integrity, living in such a way that your heart doesn't have to hide. And then there's right livelihood, a teaching often ignored but deeply profound. It means earning your living in a way that does not exploit others or poison the world. Not selling weapons, not trafficking lies, not manipulating fear for profit. It means asking, does my work reflect my values? Do I help heal or do I contribute to harm? Because what you do for a paycheck becomes what you do with your life. These three, speech, action, livelihood, are how the path walks through the world. They're not about sainthood. They're about alignment. So your inner life and outer life are no longer at war. But even with the best intentions, even with ethical living, the mind still wanders, still stumbles, still burns. And so the path turns inward, to the practice of right effort, which isn't about trying harder, grinding more, forcing success. It's about planting good seeds and pulling the weeds gently. Right effort means noticing when an unwholesome state begins to grow, like anger or jealousy, and not feeding it. It means nurturing the wholesome states, like generosity, patience, stillness, so they bloom. And then comes right mindfulness, the heart of it all. To be mindful is to live awake, to observe without clinging, to feel without drowning, to notice the breath of the body, the emotion, the thought, without becoming any of it. Its presence, pure, unfiltered, available in every moment if only we return. And when mindfulness deepens, it gives rise to right concentration. Not a rigid, strained focus, but a deep, collected awareness, a gathering of the mind, like still water reflecting the moon without distortion. In this state, the fires begin to die down, the mind rests, the heart opens, and suffering begins to dissolve. These 8 steps are not linear, they dance together, they support one another. Speech informs action, mindfulness strengthens effort, concentration deepens view. It's not a staircase, it's a wheel. And the more you walk it, the more it turns. The more it turns, the more it transforms. Not just your suffering, but your entire way of being. Because this is not a path of escape. It's not about numbing out or transcending life. It's a path of engaged freedom. You still show up. You still love, you still lose, you still feel, but you're no longer trapped. You become the eye of the storm, present, clear, unshaken, and you begin to see that every situation, no matter how painful, is an invitation, not to control, Not to fix, but to wake up, to soften, to return, to choose peace again and again. So don't ask, how fast can I reach Nibbāna? Ask instead, how gently can I walk this step? Because every mindful breath, every kind word, every time you let go instead of grasp, you are walking out of suffering. You are burning a little less. You are breathing a little deeper. You are becoming the very peace you once sought in the world. And this is where real transformation begins. Just when you think you found your rhythm on the path, when the breath feels steady, when the mind begins to quiet, when peace starts to whisper in the corners of your being, that's when they arrive, not as monsters, not with horns and fangs, but with familiarity. They come dressed as your own thoughts, your own moods, your own habits. They're not evil. They're not even your enemies. They're just the natural resistance of a mind that's been untrained for a long, long time. In Buddhism, we call them the 5 hindrances. And if the eightfold path is a road to freedom, then these 5 are the potholes, detours, and distractions that keep pulling us off course. The first to appear is sensual desire. It's not just lust or indulgence. It's that little tug in the back of your mind. Wouldn't it be nicer if I were anywhere but here? You're sitting in silence, watching the breath. And suddenly, the mind floats off to food, to fantasy, to a better version of now. Sensual desire is the craving for stimulation, a restless search for pleasure, not because we're evil, but because we're bored, uncomfortable, conditioned to chase distraction. But here's the truth: desire doesn't promise happiness. It promises relief and delivers more craving. And so the fire grows. The second visitor, ill will, this one's sharper. It's the flash of irritation when someone interrupts your peace. It's the slow burn of resentment when life doesn't go your way. It shows up as impatience with others and sometimes as self-hatred. Ill will closes the heart. It contracts the breath. It whispers that the world is your enemy. But the path to peace is not paved with blame. It is softened by compassion. And ill will loses its power the moment we choose to open instead of close. Then comes the heaviness, sloth and torpor. This isn't just sleepiness, it's a spiritual fog, a dullness that makes the path feel pointless, like walking through molasses with your eyes half shut. Sometimes it shows up as laziness, other times as depression. The key here is gentle energy. Not force, not shame, but small, mindful movements, like lighting a candle in a dark room, not to chase away the night, but to remember there's still light inside you. And then there's the wild one, restlessness and worry, the monkey mind, the endless to-do list that invades your meditation, the fear that says, "Am I wasting time? What if I'm doing this wrong?" Restlessness keeps you in motion, not forward but frantic. It feeds on the illusion that salvation lies in the next thought, the next plan, the next distraction. But what it really fears is stillness. Because in silence there's nothing to fix, no one to impress, just you and what's real. And finally, perhaps the most dangerous hindrance of all, doubt. Not the healthy kind that asks questions, but the sneaky kind that paralyses. The voice that says, "This won't work. I'm not cut out for this. Maybe peace is for other people, not me." Doubt is subtle. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It makes you stop trying just enough to prevent transformation. But here's the medicine: you don't have to believe your doubt. You just have to see it, hold it, watch it pass. Because like every other hindrance, doubt is not permanent, it's just weather, a passing cloud across the vast sky of your awareness. And here's the secret: you don't have to fight the 5 hindrances. You don't need to destroy them. You just need to know them, name them, sit beside them without flinching. Desire is here. Anger has come. Sleepiness is present. Restlessness is dancing. Doubt is speaking again. When you bring awareness to these guests, they lose their power. They stop being invisible puppeteers. They become what they always were, just movements in the mind. And you remain the space in which they come and go. This is the true art of meditation, not becoming peaceful overnight, but learning to stay even when the mind gets noisy. It's the difference between reacting and responding, between clinging and witnessing, between being lost in thought and gently coming home. And in this homecoming, the path opens once more, clearer, softer, wiser, because now you're not just walking the path. You're walking it with eyes open. You recognize the traps. You bow to the detours, and you keep walking anyway. And slowly you realize something astonishing. The obstacles weren't blocking your path. They were the path. Each hindrance you face becomes a teacher. Each struggle a turning point. Each distraction a reminder to return. And this is how peace becomes unshakable. Not because the world stops throwing storms, but because you've learned to walk through them without losing your center. We can talk about suffering. We can analyze the nature of the mind. We can memorize the Eightfold Path. But the real question is this: can it change a life? Not just in theory, not just in peaceful moments on a meditation cushion, but in the chaos of real life, when things fall apart. Let me tell you about Maya. She was a mother of two, working a high-stress job, living what looked like a successful life. Until one winter morning, she lost her youngest child in a car accident. The pain wasn't just emotional, it was cellular. Her breath changed. Her skin ached. She said it felt like her soul was dissolving. And for months she couldn't pray. She couldn't meditate. She couldn't even cry. Friends told her, be strong. Books told her, time heals. Nothing helped. Then one day, she walked into a small Zen center near her home. She didn't go looking for answers. She just needed a place to sit. The monks said nothing, just offered tea, and they sat in silence. No pressure, no fixing, just space. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to be okay. Over time, Maya learned to sit with her pain the way one holds a sleeping baby, tenderly, without trying to change it. She didn't try to get over her grief. She walked with it, breathed with it, gave it room to exist without letting it consume her. The teachings of impermanence helped her not to forget her daughter, but to stop fighting the fact that she was gone. That's the transformation. Not escaping the wound, but holding it so gently it becomes sacred. Then there's Arjun. He grew up poor, violence in the home, shame clinging to every memory like smoke. As a young man, he was full of rage. He drank to numb the ache, fought to feel in control. Until one night, alone in a dark alley after a bar fight, he fell to his knees and screamed into the cold sky, "Why was I even born?" What followed wasn't a miracle. It was a series of quiet steps. He met a retired therapist who introduced him to mindfulness. At first, he thought it was nonsense, but something about just breathing, just noticing, gave his anger a place to land. He started sitting, just 5 minutes a day, then 10, then 20. The practice didn't erase his past, but it began to separate his pain from his identity. He realized he wasn't broken. He was carrying generations of hurt that were never spoken aloud. Meditation gave him space to feel it all without exploding. The fire didn't vanish, but it stopped burning everyone around him, and that changed everything. He didn't become a monk. He still works construction, still lifts weights, still has scars, but now he smiles more, cries without shame, listens without waiting to speak. That's awakening in real life. Then there's an older woman named Jean, a widow, living alone in a small apartment filled with photos of her late husband. Every morning she would make tea for two, out of habit, out of longing, out of love. But every sip reminded her he wasn't coming back. One day her niece invited her to a day-long retreat. She almost said no, but something said, just go. There, during a walking meditation, something shifted. as she slowly moved, heel to toe, one mindful step at a time. She realized she had been walking through life with only one foot. The past, in that moment she whispered, "I can miss him and still move forward." That wasn't forgetting, that was freedom. She now walks every morning, one step for her, one step for him, one step for peace. The photos still hang, but her joy no longer depends on erasing her grief. And then there's you. Yes, you, the one listening right now. You may not have lost a child. You may not carry rage. You may not be living alone, but you know what it's like to hurt, to feel stuck, to wish life would just pause for a second so you could breathe. And this is where Buddhism becomes more than a teaching. It becomes a mirror. It shows you not a perfect version of yourself, but a possible one. A version that doesn't chase or resist or numb, but feels, sees, holds steady. You don't have to shave your head or move to the mountains or give up your job. You just have to wake up again and again, moment by moment. You have to learn to sit with your desire, to breathe with your anger, to dance with your doubt, not to fix them, but to stop being ruled by them, because transformation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the softest voice in the room saying, "I am still here. I didn't run. I chose presence over panic." That's real power. So the next time pain knocks on your door, instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this?" try asking, "What is this here to teach me?" Because inside every hurt is a doorway. Inside every struggle is a seed. And when you water it with awareness, it grows into freedom, one breath at a time. What if your life wasn't a puzzle to be solved, but a canvas to be painted? What if, instead of trying to fix everything, you learn to work with it just as it is? Not someday, not when things get easier, but now, in this breath, in this body, in this perfectly imperfect moment. This is the quiet invitation of Buddhism, not to escape life, but to create with it, to become the artist of your own existence. An artist doesn't wait for perfect conditions. They don't demand clean brushes, flawless tools, or the right mood. They take what they're given, the mess, the beauty, the heartbreak, the wonder, and they make something meaningful out of it. Living wisely is just like that. It's not about avoiding mistakes. It's about seeing mistakes as brushstrokes, texture, depth, layers, because wisdom isn't sterile, it's alive, it's responsive. It knows how to feel pain without drowning in it, how to enjoy pleasure without clinging to it, and above all, it knows how to begin again. But how do we become this kind of artist? Not by force, not by faking serenity, but by practicing the inner arts, presence, compassion, discernment, letting go. Let's begin with presence. True presence is not just being here. It's being fully awake to the life that's unfolding within you, around you as you. It's feeling the coffee cup in your hands, noticing the breath as it comes and goes, hearing the birds outside your window, even when, especially when, your mind wants to be anywhere else. Presence turns the ordinary into sacred. It's not glamorous, but it is luminous. Next comes compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. Because the artist of life doesn't criticize every brushstroke. They don't curse the rain when the colors run. They welcome imperfection as part of the story. Can you soften when you fall short? Can you forgive your forgetfulness? Can you love the version of you that's still learning? This isn't weakness. This is strength without armor. Then there's discernment, the ability to pause and ask, what is skillful here? What response leads to more clarity, not more confusion? This is different from judgment. Judgment attacks. Discernment listens. It listens for what brings peace instead of drama, growth instead of ego, truth instead of impulse. And finally, the most underrated art of all, letting go. Letting go doesn't mean not caring, it means not gripping. It means giving up the illusion of control, not because you're passive, but because you're wise enough to ride the waves instead of trying to stop the ocean. It's releasing the outcome while still showing up with your whole heart. This is what makes the artist of life different. They don't paint to impress. They don't create to prove their worth. They express because it's what the moment asks for. They live in tune with the changing seasons of their mind. They know when to act, when to wait, when to speak, when to stay silent. And they know this too, the masterpiece is not some future version of life. It's what you're shaping right now. This hour, this decision, this breath. Let me tell you a story. There was once a Zen monk named Ryokan. He lived alone in a small hut at the foot of a mountain. He owned almost nothing. His robe was patched, his bowl chipped, but his joy was boundless. Children would come and steal his fruit, and he would smile. Villagers would interrupt his meditations, and he'd serve them tea. One night, a thief broke into his hut, only to find there was nothing to steal. Ryokan returned home, caught him in the act, and said gently, "You've come a long way to visit me, and you shouldn't leave empty-handed." He handed the thief his only robe. After the man left, Ryokan sat naked beneath the stars and whispered, "I wish I could give him this moon." That is the artist of life. Not clinging, not resenting, just giving, just being. And you don't need to be a monk in the mountains to live like this. You can be a mother in the kitchen, a student on the train, an entrepreneur in a noisy cafe. Wisdom isn't about your title. It's about your tone, the quality of your presence in each moment. The painter uses colors. The musician sound. You use life itself, your words, your attention, your small, unseen choices. And you begin to see. It's not about having a perfect life. It's about having an honest one, an intentional one, a compassionate one where the mess is allowed, where the pain becomes poetry, where your light doesn't blind others, it includes them. This is not a fantasy. This is a path, a practice, a way of being that can be learned day by day, and it doesn't demand that you never fall. It simply asks, will you rise more gently each time? Will you take the sorrow and shape it into a song? Will you take the joy and let it humble you? Will you meet each moment with the brush in your hand and the heart wide open? Because when you do, you stop living reactively and begin living artistically. You stop surviving and begin creating, not just a life that looks good from the outside, but one that feels free from the inside out. So here we are. After walking together through suffering, desire, fire, freedom, and the art of presence, after hearing stories of transformation, and seeing how even the messiest parts of life can become sacred brushstrokes, the question returns, if life includes suffering, why live at all? The answer is not in any doctrine, not even in the words of the Buddha. The answer is found in something much more subtle. It's in the feeling that arises when your breath finally slows, when you're no longer chasing, no longer running, just being. It's the quiet moment you realize you are not broken, you are becoming, not despite the pain, but through it. Life is not a punishment to endure, it is an invitation to awaken. We live not to avoid suffering, but to understand it, to meet it with such tenderness, such clarity, that it no longer defines us. We live not to be untouched by sorrow, but to love so deeply that sorrow has no choice but to soften in our arms. We live not to win at life, but to weave meaning from it, strand by strand, moment by moment, to walk with open eyes and an undefended heart. Because when you live like this, even grief becomes a teacher, even endings become beginnings, even the wobble of life becomes part of the dance. You are not here to escape the storm. You are here to learn how to hold the wheel with steady hands. You are not here to keep the sandcastle from crumbling. You are here to sit with grace as the tide comes in, and then build again with wonder in your eyes. You are not here to become perfect. You are here to become real. And when you live like this, You give others permission to do the same. Your presence becomes medicine. Your life becomes a refuge. So, why live? Because this world needs people who are awake, people who can stay kind in chaos, people who can listen more deeply than the noise, people who can suffer without bitterness and love without fear. The path doesn't promise to remove all pain, but it does promise this, that no matter how heavy the moment, you can carry it with wisdom, you can meet it with peace, you can walk through it with a heart wide open. And that is what makes life worth living. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. Because you showed up fully, gently, courageously, because you chose to keep going. Even when you didn't know how, even when you were afraid, you kept walking, one breath at a time, and somehow in doing so, you became free, not from life, but within it. If this journey resonated with you, if something inside you softened, awakened, or felt seen, I invite you to keep walking with us. Subscribe to Zen Buddhism Wisdom. This space was created for hearts like yours, seeking truth, gentleness, and depth. There's no pressure, just presence. No noise, just a quiet invitation to live more fully, more wisely, and more beautifully. And if you feel this message could help someone you love, send it their way. It might be the very light they need today. Until next time, breathe deeply, walk gently, and remember the peace you're looking for is already within you, waiting to be remembered.